All right. Call to order the meeting of the Complaint Committee. This is a special meeting on February 17th, 2015. It is currently just after 5 o'clock on February 17th. So call to order.
Item number 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes. On the call of the roll, Member Copra absent. Member Washburn.
Here.
Washburn present. Chair Hepner.
Here.
Hepner present. We have a quorum.
Right, and moving to item number 2.
Item number 2, file number 14120, complaint filed by Ann Trabeau / Paula Tetesh against Rebecca Krell and the San Francisco Arts Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.25 for failure to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and complete manner. First item of business would be the termination of jurisdiction.
Right, and I don't believe there's any issue as to jurisdiction. I'll move to find jurisdiction.
I second it.
Is there any public comment regarding jurisdiction? There being none, on the motion to find jurisdiction, may we pass that by unanimous vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Moving on, next is hearing on the matter. I would like to ask a clarifying question of the complainant before starting. I would like to know which name you would like to be known on for all your complaints, either Ann Trabeau or Paula Tetesh.
I have a real issue with that. The reason why I changed my name is to try and extradite myself from previous.
I would just like to know one or the other.
My name is Ann Trabeau.
Okay, I will make that adjustment to all your complaints.
Okay. From today moving forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Okay. Members of the task force, Member Washburn and Member Hebner. The first complaint concerns 3 late unanswered IDRs. The last 2 were withdrawn, so there are 3 IDRs. The first one was an email submitted to the Commission Secretary with concerns or something or other. Wait a minute. The first one is in your packet. It was, for all the minutes for the upcoming hearing, and so I never got a response to that. It was sent to the correct email. I sent a couple follow-ups, and I never, ever got a response to that. That's the first one. 02 was an IDR that was sent by email on 12/18. There was no auto-away message, and the email that Krill provided was not sent to me. It was sent to another person in the office, Sharon Page Ritchie. I wasn't even copied on it, so I don't know what relevance that has to anything. The last one, 05, is again the same thing. I sent an email IDR, and the response from Krill is that she sent out an auto-away response on December 16th. This auto-away response that she included in the packet was not sent to me. It was sent to Sharon Page Ritchie. So I believe I got a response to that, but it was very late. So the December 5th, Friday IDR, she contends, was sent on another date. No, here it is, Friday, December 5th at 11 a.m. An IDR would be the close of business the next day. I never got a response to that, even today as we speak. Page number 12. In your packet is the evidence that Krill supplies of an audio away that was sent from her to Sharon Page Ritchie. I'm not copied on it. I have nothing to do with an advisory committee screening. I don't know why she would submit that as evidence. Page 13 is, again, evidence submitted by Rebecca Krill, an email from her to Sharon Page Ritchie on December 18th at 3:11 p.m. I'm not copied on it, and I don't know why she submitted this as evidence. Page 14 is Again, the same inner office bouncing around audio away email. And January 23rd, page 14. Oh, that's when she finally answered my question of December 5th. Again, that is a late IDR. An IDR 67.25 is the close of business the following day, not a month and a half later. Anything, I'm sorry, I'm out of the office, anything, and we've been through this so many times before, but it's still happening. Page 15 is, again, from Sharon Page Ritchie to Rebecca Krill, FYI. I don't know what that has to do with me, or the IDR that I sent. And here again, page 16, December 26th at, I can't read it, 10:54 a.m., I'm saying to Mr. Young, I would like to open a complaint because I didn't receive a response to this. It's just ongoing nonsense. Bottom line, these are 3 late IDRs, 6725. I actually needed that information to prepare for the compliance hearing. And, when did it come? Months later. So that's my take on it. I don't see what excuse there can possibly be. Oh, this is a good one. Page 18, December 24 at 3:02 p.m. This is a response. Oh, this is going into the next complaint, I think. Yeah, this is the next complaint. Right. So 3 IDRs that were late responses.
Is there a representative of the Respondent Arts Commission present still?
Is there any speakers in support of the complainant?
Correct. Thank you.
There are no speakers in support of the complainant.
Good afternoon. So our response is provided in your packet on page 37, I believe. I think that's a response to all 5. It's before 2 were withdrawn. So we're maintaining that all of these responses to all 5 requests were on time. So regarding the out of office, those are automatic. They're automatically sent, as you're probably aware. So there's no way for me to have the out of office that was sent to a certain person unless that person then sends it back to me, right? So I can't provide that. Do you have any? I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have this time.
Yeah, I understand that the SF Arts Commission has now established an email address, at a new email address specifically for public records requests. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
based on Mr. Young's recommendation.
Okay, and was that after these IDRs? Were these IDRs went to you personally? Is that accurate?
Well, so some of them did and some of them did not, but
Okay.
but this is before the email address was established.
Okay. And
So, obviously we can ask people and provide information to people, but we don't have control over whom they send questions to or what addresses they send questions to or whether they spell names correctly. I mean, that's just not within our control.
right. So, I mean, one thing is, if a request is sent to you personally,
Yes.
and you're not in the office, ideally it would be forwarded to somebody who's there, who also has the capacity to respond immediately. And hopefully that's what this new address is for. It will more than just one person.
So the address will just go to one person, but we have all staff, whenever staff are out, there's an automatic out of office, and that does have someone else to contact always.
Okay, for the new address.
Always for everything. It's just an office policy. So when I'm out of the office, I say if you need to reach someone immediately, and then I have somebody else that they can contact.
Okay, and is there a reason why Ms. Trabeau would not have gotten your automatic out of office if the requests were sent to your address?
No, none that I can possibly begin to imagine.
Okay. So it's your contention then that all of these IDRs were responded to, if not the day after the request was actually submitted by Ms. Trabeau, then the day after it was actually received by you because you were out of the office on vacation or for other reasons.
Yes, absolutely. And we have all of the documentation as backup, all of the emails that we sent in response to the various requests.
Okay, so okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from Member Washburn at this time?
I just wanted to be reminded about which items we're still looking at, which files, because a couple of them were withdrawn.
Yes, that would be, I believe it is 1, 2, and 5 are still active.
So that's December 5th, December 15th, and the January 6th IDR?
December 21st.
I don't see a December 21st IDR in the memorandum, reference in the memorandum.
First one is January 6th.
What?
Am I missing this? What I see.
So on our response, they're numbered 14120-1, 14120-2,
Right.
-3, -4, and -5.
And those dates match what are in the memorandum, that the IDRs were submitted on, the first one was submitted on 12/5, the second was submitted on 12/17, and the fifth was submitted on,
I believe it is either
that
12/15.
December 16th,
No, it's 12/15.
12/15.
12/15. Okay. So they're not chronologically numbered, is is why that's a little
Okay.
confusing.
All right.
Okay. All right. So can I just ask a couple questions to Ms. Trabeau? The IDR that you submitted on December 5th, this is number 1.
Right.
What did the San Francisco Arts Commission reply to you on December 11th?
Are you asking me, did I get a response on December 11th?
Yes.
Yes, I did, but I did not get an interim auto-away response.
Okay,
There
so
was
I
nothing.
just want to address first whether there was a response, and then we can go into the adequacy of the response and sort of separate those two issues for now. So
Okay.
you did get a response on December 11th to your first IDR.
I did.
Whether it was sufficient is another question. The second, now I'm going back to page 36, was it?
37.
37. yeah.
37. Item number 2, did you receive a response on December 24th to the IDR that you submitted on December 17th?
I received a response on December 24th.
Okay. And then on the fifth IDR, which was submitted by 12/15/14, not 12/16, as
Correct.
indicated on page 37, the Arts Commission contends that it submitted a response on December 24th to that IDR. Is that accurate?
I received a response on December 24th.
Okay. Now, just going down the same list, the first IDR, Was that a sufficient response that you received on December 11th or not? And if not, what was insufficient? You requested all written documents regarding a list of all minutes up for a compliance hearing at the Compliance and Amendments Committee on 12/16/14.
I believe it was sufficient.
Okay, and then the second one, you requested an IDR for a CD of audio of the December 1st, 2014 SF Arts Commission meeting. Did you receive that? Was the response that you received on December 24th sufficient?
No, it was not sufficient.
Did they respond? What was the response? Was it that a CD costs a certain amount of money? Or what was the response on December 24th?
December 24th.
I'm assuming it was a CD of audio, that the CD of the audio was not provided. Is that accurate?
It took a lot more emails to get the CD audio, but
you did receive the CD audio ultimately.
about 6 months later. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. Okay, and then the fifth. Do you recall the date that you received the CD audio?
No, I don't recall offhand. I know
Okay.
that it took a lot of emails, and which should have taken one.
Okay, and then the fifth item, the December 16th, 2014 IDR that was responded to on December 24th, was that response? You requested a November 2014 logbooks.
No, that wasn't an adequate response because included in it was months that I did not ask for, and I believe that there were additional documents that were not provided.
Okay. So did you receive November 2014 logbooks? Just they weren't complete, or?
I received 3 PDF attachments, one something handwritten, one some photos, and one a typewritten logbook. I did not believe the logbooks were complete because included in it was one for the month of December, which I didn't ask for, and it was, I believe I asked for downtown monitoring, and there were typically in that month, in the 6 weeks of a holiday season, there would be a lot more monitoring going on than what was submitted to me.
Okay. So your sort of idea that this was an inadequate response is based on your personal experience, that there would have been more logbooks given the amount of activity going on at the time?
Correct.
Okay. So did you ever communicate that to the SF Arts Commission that, hey, this doesn't look like enough?
Communication is the problem.
Well,
Yeah.
I fully believe you there.
Yeah, that's
but
the problem.
The question is whether you asked a follow-up. Was there an opportunity for you to follow up?
I believe I left several phone messages throughout the time.
Okay. And can I just ask a follow-up question to the respondent? And that question is this: with respect to the last item, did you respond to this item personally?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and were all November 2014 logbooks provided?
Yes, they were.
And is there any understanding that the complainant's position is that there should have been a lot more logbooks? There's a lot of activity going on at this time. Why aren't there more logbooks? So if I were to ask you that, what would your response be?
I would have to discuss with our program staff exactly how many inspections there were and, ask more questions about why there weren't more documents, but I know we handed over whatever we had.
Okay. All right, I think that's all my questions for now.
I had some questions about the second, the IDR for the CD. So I recall somewhere seeing a discussion of the cost that it would be. So when you responded on the 24th regarding the CD, you said that you could make it available and the CD would cost a certain amount and to mail it. So according to your records, when did you send it to Ms. Trabeau?
According to my records, we received this on the 10th and responded the following day on the 11th. I can look in the packet and try to find the response.
Oh, actually, it says here, I'm referring to her request of the December 17th that was responded to on the 24th. And it was asking for the CD.
Oh, this -2? Okay.
-2, yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. She was saying that it took months to get a lot of emails and months to get this.
Right, which is interesting since it's only February. But let's see, it was sent to me while I was out of the office, and the out-of-office automatic email reply, I returned on the 23rd and I responded on the 24th, right?
I'm sorry.
So when did you send, so when you responded, your response was, yes, we will provide this CD to you. It costs a certain amount of money. So what happened after that? Ms. Trudeau says there were a lot of emails back and forth, and she didn't receive it for a very long time.
So I would have to look at my records, because these records that we've sent to you are specifically in response to these complaints, and we receive so many emails and requests every day from this individual, but we always aim to comply right away. I mean, producing an audio obviously is very quick, it's very easy, it's also always posted on our website. We have numerous times in the past produced and sent numerous copies of the same CD because we receive the same requests over and over again.
And I will note that in your response on 12/24, it appears you did provide a link to the audio of the meeting in question. Is that correct, that was a response to that request?
That's correct. I believe that we began charging based on research we did with other agencies, so we wanted to make sure that we are compliant and that we're also following what other agencies of the city and county are doing. So that was, in particular, after a conversation with Mr. Young, that is the same charge that the Board of Supervisors charges. So we're just wanting to follow the same policies and procedures.
Okay. Are there any additional questions for Ms. Crow?
I don't believe so. I have no more. Thank you.
All right, and we are going to allow rebuttals.
Yes.
Correct. So, would the complainant like to begin her rebuttal?
No, actually, it's a respondent.
Excuse me. Respondent has the first opportunity at a rebuttal. Thank you.
I would just reiterate that we believe that we have responded to all of these requests with the information requested and on time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And once again, I refer to page 30 of your packet. My memory is clear now. I actually physically sent her by hard copy page 31, which is the IDR request. I request that you mail it to me, yada, yada, yada. All she had to do was say, I've mailed it to you. Instead came a generic response, which left me hanging for several weeks more, wondering, is this coming in the mail? What is going on here? So it's a question of not reading the IDR and submitting the information. It's a question of padding their responses with a lot of personal attacks. I do not send multiple IDRs every day. I am simply wanting information to prepare for a compliance hearing, to see what activity is going on in the street during a busy time with construction and with things going on. It is impossible to communicate with that agency, and the only way you're going to get a response is by, unfortunately, sending an IDR. I think I've documented to you over and over again how difficult it is to do anything with that agency. Bottom line, these are late responses to IDRs, and they should be seen that way. And there's never with the Arts Commission, it's never, we understand that we're late. We're going to try and make an effort in the future to be more attentive or this person can make an appointment to inspect these documents rather than burn the audio CD. There's never been that kind of discussion with these people. These are legal requirements. People are allowed to go up into offices and look at documents. They don't have to be sent by mail. It's less time-consuming, possibly. There's never been that option afforded to me. It's been, look at this inspection log, or look at these logs of IDRs. I looked at that logbook. Those are the repetitive IDRs are not IDRs that I made. They are entering them into their log without verifying that this was the email sent on this date and this time by this person. There was a lengthy discussion with Member Pilpel and the Arts Commission at the Education and Outreach, which putting an additional column in that log would somehow satisfy the problem. It doesn't, because no one is verifying or checking off what is going on when they enter these into their log.
Thank you. And the matter is now with the Complaints Committee.
I read over this this morning and was confused about which matters had been withdrawn and so forth, but that's now clear. And it sounds like the Arts Commission has given Ms. Trudeau the information she asked for. She may believe there's more, but I'm lacking any evidence. I mean, you can't prove a negative, so I'm not sure what to do about that. Also, the Arts Commission, there were people out at that time of year, as you might imagine, and they were responding with out-of-office replies and giving an alternative person to contact. And at that point, it was incumbent on the complainant to contact that person. So there's no evidence that Ann Trickey, for example, was contacted as the alternative person. So at this point, I'm not able to make a motion to fine for a violation. Those are my thoughts right now.
Yeah, and I think they're consistent with my thoughts. There was, at the very least, a direction in response to these, an automatic email with included information to identify, to contact a different individual with the request, and not seeing any evidence that was followed up upon. I have a hard time finding a violation, even on lateness grounds, even though, provided that the automated response gave that alternative route. I also find the San Francisco Arts Commission representative credible with respect to efforts that were taken to respond adequately to the IDRs in question. So I would say that I also do not find grounds to make a motion for any violation on this matter.
I believe that the committee will recommend to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force that no violation be found. I believe that would be it, and I will put in a description of why you believe that based on your recent discussion.
Thank you.
Upon referral with that recommendation to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, the task force shall review your recommendation and either accept the recommendation or schedule for a hearing at a future date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment regarding this matter? There's no public comment regarding this matter. Would you like to vote to make that recommendation to the full task force?
So move.
Second.
Member Copra, Copra absent. Member Washburn,
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Chair Hepner,
Aye.
Hepner, aye. That motion shall be referred and recommended to the full task force with a recommendation that no violation be found. Next on the agenda is file number 15001, complaint filed by Andrew Bowe against Sharon Page Ritchie and Rebecca Krill of the San Francisco Arts Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.7, 67.14, 67.16, and 67.25 for failure to post audio and advisory committee minutes online and failure to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, and
Jurisdiction.
we need to find jurisdiction. I see no reason not to find jurisdiction.
So move.
Second.
Public comment regarding jurisdiction? There is no comment. This motion is passed without objection. I assume there's no objection.
No objection.
You see page 66 of your packet. This complaint has two parts. The first part is the IDR, and the second part is the audio of advisory meetings. So page 66 is a timeline. The date that I sent the original request for a CD audio, which was September 11th, 2014. The next day was Lazar's response, go to this particular place, and I was not able to open it, so I again requested the audio. And then for some reason he forwards it to Rebecca Krill, so it begins to get confusing over there. I couldn't open her attachment. I don't get a response. Here you have the timeline of from September 11th until December 24th to simply get a CD audio for a particular meeting. I believe I eventually got it, but it did not have to be so messed up and convoluted. That was an extraordinary amount of effort that I expended, which didn't have to happen. So that was sent as an IDR, and I see it as a late IDR. That's the first part of the complaint. The second one concerns the audio of this policy body meeting, which is a standing policy body, which, according to the charter, they're kind of silent on the issue, but it says each board or commission in the charter must audio record regular meetings, admin code subsection 67.14 parentheses B. I spent hours looking through the charter, looking through the Brown Act, the Good Government Guide, which really doesn't even apply, which Krill quotes only parts of. The San Francisco Arts Commission is an executive branch of the government, and the San Francisco Charter requires that each subcommittee keep a record of the proceedings. It doesn't say record, audio record. It doesn't say written record, handwritten. That's Charter subsection 4.104, parentheses A, parentheses 3. So I think in light of the fact that they've changed the screening requirements, there are 5 pages, which might sound small and petty to an average individual, but there are 450 people out there that will be affected. Their livelihoods are severely affected, as is mine. And rather than have some well over half don't speak English anyway. Rather than have 2 inspectors come out and yell and scream and then throw some handwritten ticket of a violation, which you can't even read, it might be helpful to just come out and say, here's the new screening criteria. Here are the 5 pages. We're sorry we didn't have a chance to write it in Chinese or in Spanish or whatever, but this is what it is. I tried to do it by getting a CD, but, that was not too productive. I still don't know what the screening criteria is. I make earrings. They're changing. If the artwork is 2x4, it's got to have your name and initials. If there's no space for it, then you got to put a logo. I mean, it goes on and on. If you were to try to read this 5-page document, your mind would be spinning. What are they talking about? And that's basically it. I got an 18-page document over bottle caps. So my contention is the public needs to know what's going on. If they're changing the screening criteria, people need to know. I'm not here to fight the good fight over other people. I'm basically out of that program, but I believe that a person does not need to go to the extraordinary lengths that I've gone through to simply find out what's going on. It should be posted on their website. It should be made available to the public. 450 people, the majority not speaking English, that do not know what the screening criteria is. Thank you.
Okay. I do have a question or two for you.
Okay.
Just before.
We should hear from the respondent.
Okay, we'll hear from.
Facts and evidence and then.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. In just a second, excuse me. I'll hold those questions. Is there anybody to offer a comment on behalf of the complainant? Seeing none, if we could hear from the respondent in this matter.
Hi, so it looks like these two complaints were combined in this packet. I'm seeing all of 14120 in this item number 3, and I'm not seeing our response, which I believe was sent on February 3rd. So I'm just going to go with the city attorney's memo here, but let's see. The advisory committee is not a committee of the arts commissioners, nor is it a committee of the arts commission. I think we've been over this before. I'm kind of having deja vu, but it is composed of artists and craftspeople and is advisory to the commission. Therefore, while audio recordings of the meetings of the advisory committee have always been made available to the public, the Arts Commission is not required to post such recordings. And so we follow the Good Government Guide. The Good Government Guide, Section F, Records of Meetings, Audio recording, states that each board or commission listed in the charter must audio record regular and special meetings. Other policy bodies are not required to audio record their meetings. So that's what we're following. And that's the policy document that we follow.
Okay, and I want to sort of reserve that. Are you going to offer comment on the first portion of this pertaining to the CD?
Oh, I'm looking at the part 1 and part 2 in your city attorney's memo because I don't see our memo in this packet, unfortunately. Okay. I just printed out the packet. So that's an ongoing issue. We do, let's see, we chose to do so voluntarily over 3 decades ago and have made them available to the public, including on numerous occasions with audio links and CDs to the complainant herself. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the 2 items got mixed up in this packet, but.
The CD that was requested.
Yes.
Can you explain when it was provided? In a little bit of that process? Because it does appear that there was quite, this was an IDR, and there does seem to have been a stretch of time between the IDR and when the CD was actually received.
So the complainant requested a copy on September 11th. Howard Lazar responded on September 12th, including a link to the audio file. She couldn't view the link and wanted a CD of the audio mailed to her. Mr. Lazar emailed the complainant informing her that she would be charged for the cost and the postage, and then we did not receive another anything after that.
So there was no CD ultimately sent out? Ms. Trebeau indicates that a money order was sent for for that CD. I don't know if you have any record of that or any knowledge of that. On page 66 of the packet, in Ms. Trebow's timeline, it indicates her position that on September 12th, in response to Mr. Lazar's response requesting that money be delivered for the CD, that Ms. Trebow sent a money order.
I do not believe we ever received a money order, but I would need to check.
Okay. And
I mean, I just, if we received a money order, we would have sent a CD out. We only recently began charging for the CDs, so before we were always just sending CDs out whenever they were requested. There's never a reason for us not to send a CD out when it's requested. So I don't have all of that here. I'm sorry that I don't.
I think it was Ms. Trebow's position, though, that a CD was in fact sent out.
I sent a money order on the 12th.
Okay. Was a CD sent out to you?
No.
There was never a CD sent out to you.
Then I resent a money order again to Ms. Krill.
Is there any record of the money order that we have? I mean, I have your word, but...
No, I needed to compile a file on this.
Well, it's never simple here at the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
No, I do recall sending a lot of emails.
Okay, well, I have a couple questions for Ms. Datesh, and then I'll have a couple questions for you as well. But first of all, is anybody present to provide comment on behalf of the respondent? Seeing nobody. A couple questions. So, Mr. Bowe, you sent out a money order on September 12th, according to this timeline on page 66 of our packet.
Yes.
I'm a little confused, though. It appears that you first requested a CD audio of the advisory committee meeting of September 3rd, and then later sent an email requesting CD audio of March 13th, and then requesting a CD of December 1st, and then...
This was one.
So there were 3 different CD audio meetings requested in this period?
No, not in that period. This concerned one CD audio of an advisory committee of September 3rd.
Okay.
Eventually, I did get it. I sent the money order twice. Actually, the second one was sent to Rebecca Krill along in the manila envelope with all the email correspondence that had transpired over this one CD audio. I actually gave my phone number and asked her to contact me directly because it was just so annoying.
Okay, so you did receive the CD audio, but you did not receive it. In Mr. Lazar's first response, he sent you a link to listen to the audio.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
And you explained that you could not open the link. Is that
correct? Yeah.
Okay.
I spent hours at that, wondering why. It gets very verbose once other people, they bounce it around the office and they create this huge paper trail. So he's bouncing it from his cubicle to the assistant.
Okay. But before we get into this, because I don't need to understand
It's just-
the entire infrastructure of the Arts Commission.
Yeah.
On September 12th, Harold Lazar responded with a link that you
Right.
could not open. He requested that you send a money order. You did so on September 12th.
Yes.
Whether or not that was received by the SF Arts Commission is disputed. They say it was not received because that's why no CD was sent out immediately. You sent out an additional money order and ultimately did receive the CD.
Yes,
Is that correct?
because I
Of
sent
the
it-
September 3rd advisory committee meeting?
Yes, I send a return receipt. And
Okay.
that's a problem that they have with a lot of their correspondence, particularly in the street artist area, like the response to that 18-page document over bottle caps. Send your response to street.artist at SF.gov, but then send it to Alyssa.li, I don't know how to pronounce her name, at SF.gov, and call. So you're saying to yourself, where am I actually sending my response to?
Well,
And
that could be interpreted as an effort by the Arts Commission to actually make sure that they receive the request in question, right?
You haven't read Howard Lazar's letter.
I certainly, well, I'd be shocked if I haven't by this point. But in any event,
Verbose.
turning away from the CD audio issue to the advisory committee issue, do you have any knowledge or proof or documentation of how this advisory committee was created? Whether it was created by initiative of the SF Arts Commission or how it's organized underneath the SF Arts Commission?
It was created as part of the city charter.
Well, the advisory committee itself is not enumerated in the city charter. The SF Arts Commission is enumerated in the city charter.
Yes, it is. It's a standing policy body meeting. It meets once a month. For many years, it simply screens people. They make appointments. They spend a certain period of time. There might be 3 to 4 people in there who are asking questions, watching, and so. However, they update their screening criteria from time to time, and they've done it this year. There have been a series of meetings. I personally attended them, and I find them to be extremely disorganized. They've asked me to wait in the hallway. They will not let me stand too close.
Okay.
Personal knowledge as to how that came about, it came about the same time as the street artist program in the 1980s, I believe, 70s. They have never posted audio, and it's particularly troubling because when they're updating screening criteria, you would like to know what's going on.
Okay. So then the issue then is a bit of an issue of legal interpretation on our end. And it's something that we've been wrestling with for a long time as to whether a subcommittee of the SF Arts Commission or any other commission for that matter is subject to audio recordings and minutes requirements. I do have a couple questions for Ms. Krell on this.
Hi, so just to clarify, it's not a subcommittee of the commission. There are no commissioners on the body that we're talking about.
And no city employees on the body?
No.
But they do make recommendations to the full SF Arts Commission?
They make recommendations which then go to the street artists, which is a subcommittee of the commission, and then it will eventually go to the full commission.
Okay, and where do they meet?
They meet in Suite 70 in the basement of 25 NS.
Okay, and do you know how this body was created, this advisory committee?
I believe that they are in the admin code. They're probably in the police code. That's where most of the street artist program language is found.
Okay, and so they were probably created by an initiative that originated with the San Francisco Arts Commission. It's important because how a body was created, I do think has some bearing on whether they should be bound by certain public disclosure requirements. Mm-hmm. And that may not be a question that you have an answer to right at this moment, but I do think that it's relevant is how this body was created.
Right.
Yes,
but also relevant is the distinction between a policy body and a passive meeting body.
Right.
And so this particular committee or this advisory committee doesn't set policy. It's not a policy body.
Correct. They're strictly advisory.
They're strictly, they can't.
They're not commissioners. I mean, we have our other programs, like we have an advisory board to our gallery. We have an advisory board to our Writers' Corps program, which is a literary arts program for youth. So, they're just advisory bodies.
Right. But nonetheless, you state that even though you believe that they're not required to make audio recordings or are subject to the same requirements for posting minutes and all of that, you nonetheless do these things.
Exactly.
And so audio recordings have been made for many years.
Yes.
And they're not posted on the website?
They're not posted. They're available upon request.
Okay.
So is the issue then that because they are not crafting policy or making decisions, is that why they don't need to be audio recorded?
My understanding, this is the city attorney quoting from the Good Government Guide, is that each board or commission listed in the charter must audio record regular and special meetings, and other policy bodies are not required. So they don't even distinguish between policy and advisory. They specifically say other policy bodies are not required to audio record their meetings.
Right, but we also know that the public has a right to an open and public process, whether or not that body is a policy body or a passive meeting body.
Right.
That's in the preamble to the Sunshine Ordinance.
Right.
So I don't see a really functional distinction between policy body and passive meeting body with respect to the minutes and audio recordings requirements. Now let's put this in perspective, because the advisory committee in question here does post some manner of minutes and provides audio recordings. So this is sort of a theoretical question that we need not really reach right at this moment.
Exactly.
But, is worth considering. I personally think that a body that makes recommendations to a body above it in some type of hierarchy and takes public comment and is accessible to the public and was created by a commission or body that was enumerated in the San Francisco Charter should probably adhere to the audio requirement and the minutes requirement, as the advisory committee here does. Whether that requirement is steadfast is clearly a matter of dispute, because that would put me at odds with the Good Government Guide and the city attorney's position. But nevertheless, that's, I suppose we can move on to the other issue, which is the other issue being whether the CD was provided in a timely manner or whether the IDR request was responded to in a timely manner. And I think, unless Member Washburn has anything else to say, I think we can hear rebuttals.
There was one other part of this complaint regarding whether or not the recording was made clear the time and date and location of this meeting. Are we going to talk about that?
Right, I see that part 3.
Part 3, right.
So the memo says, we did find that the Arts Commission's posted minutes of December 1st, 2014 did indeed provide the identifying information of date, location, and name of the policy body.
Okay,
it's
so
been withdrawn, I guess.
portion 3 was withdrawn.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so can we move forward with rebuttals then and hear from the respondent, I suppose, first on the rebuttal? That's Ms. Krell.
Okay.
So I believe we've complied in this matter, and I don't have any further comments.
Thank you. And from the complainant?
First off, there is always 2 staff members present at these advisory meetings. You see it in the handwritten minutes. The way the audio record is highly suspect. I was at the last advisory meeting. I waited in the hall. Well, Lazar had a small tape recorder on his hand, which he carried around with him. When it came time for public comment, I asked him to please put it on the table that I was making a public record, and refused to do so. He actually turned his back when I was talking and had a fight with another committee member. I had about 30 seconds of public comment, which gives rise to yet another sunshine complaint. So, it's a very difficult decision to come to tonight to say, well, this thing was created as an advisory thing, and therefore they don't have to produce standing audio. I believe that's incorrect. That is a policy body meeting. They produced, after 1 year, 5 pages of screening criteria. If it's a piece of wood and not 3 pieces of different wood, we're going to, get rid of that person. If the earrings are 2 inches and not 2.5 inches, That's out. They don't post it anywhere. Nobody knows what's going on, except for these same advisory people to come out to the street and basically scream at you and say, you're in big trouble, you're going to be called in for a rescreening. Then you get these verbose letters, which you can't even trudge through. Are they completely serious about flattened bottle caps? And that's really what the whole thing is about. It's not only me. There are other people that are going to be, their livelihoods are going to be affected. I would say well over half the people are either going to have to do another form of artwork or they're not going to be renewed because of this screening criteria. So that's it. I mean, I'm out of the program. It doesn't really make a difference to me, but it does not have to be this confusing, and that's the bottom line for me. They've been getting away with it for years. Nothing more to say on it.
Okay. Thank you. And the matter is now with the task force. Member Washburn, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think I expressed how I regard the this advisory committee, and I think they're, if you look at the straight or this, just the letter of the law, then they're going above and beyond. If you consider the spirit, they are recording the meetings and making the audio available. I'm having a hard time finding a violation in this matter.
I agree, and I think that any hesitancy I have with respect to whether the advisory committee should be bound by the audio recordings and the minutes requirements in the Sunshine Task Force or in the Sunshine Ordinance. I'm satisfied that at this point audio recordings are made and provided upon request. I think that this would be a ripe item to go to rules for further discussion if they wanted to come to a conclusion. I don't think that we need to tonight come to a conclusion as to whether the advisory committee in question is bound by the audio recordings and minutes requirements. With respect to the CD, I will note that I also don't find a violation in order, provided that, given that Howard Lazar did respond in a timely manner with a link that was not accessible, but that ultimately through communication between the complainant and respondent, a CD of the audio was provided. So I believe then that our recommendation to the full task force be that no violation be found.
Yes. And did I hear something regarding sending the question to the Rules Committee to consider any part of this in terms of policy?
It seems a little funny just kicking it around committees, and I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's really a ripe issue. Does Member Washburn think that it would benefit from being considered by the Rules Committee?
Well, I don't know why it would go to rules, but I don't.
Location does not matter. It's just, is this an issue that you would like further discussion on in regards to the underlying issue of subcommittees and so forth? Can
we table it as an agenda item and to have the city attorney present to respond?
Yes, we can do that.
That would be...
We can open a separate hearing file to consider that issue.
That would be great, and put it at the call of the chair of this committee then to consider that at a later date.
Okay.
But I think this would be the committee, not...
Okay.
Rules is really looking at how we operate as a body rather than looking at the ordinance itself, which I think is more the purview of this committee.
Okay.
The recommendation is to refer this matter to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force with the recommendation that no violation be found. Additional hearing file shall be open to discuss the matter of subcommittees as discussed during this complaint.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment regarding this? Seeing no public comment, the matters the vote on the matter: Member Copra absent. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Chair Hepner?
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes. This item will be referred to the Sunshine and Orange Task Force. Next on the agenda, item number 4, file number 13073, complaint filed by Anonymous against the District Attorney George Gascon of the San Francisco District Attorney's Office for allegedly violating Administrative Code, Section 67.21b and 67.25a, and California Government Code, Section 6253C, for failing to respond to immediate disclosure requests in a timely and/or complete manner. We have received a request from Anonymous to postpone all her matters that are pending before the Sunshine Orange Task Force.
Okay.
So you have several options before you.
Well, when was that request received?
That request was received this morning. This matter has been previously continued by the complainant on a previous date. So the decision is in the hands of the committee on whether or not to allow the continuance, proceed with the hearing, and make a recommendation to the full task force, or to table the matter for non-appearance.
And is there a representative of the respondent present?
Members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. My name is Alex Passion. I'm here from the San Francisco District Attorney's Office.
Okay. And did you receive any notification of a request for continuance of this matter?
I received it from Mr. Young this morning.
Okay.
There was an email sent by Mr. Young that there is a request from the complainant to put the case over, but I do understand that this is not the first time this has occurred as well.
Okay, Mr. Young sent me an email with some suggestions about how to handle these matters. This complainant has some 30 items before us.
Approximately, yes.
And in the past year and a half, at least, we have tried various ways to accommodate this complainant, and we've scheduled hearings, and they've been continued. This has been going on for a long time, and at this point, I'm wondering about, what's fair in the larger scheme of things. We have other complainants who ask for a continuance or who fail to show up, and we very often, end the matter there, close the file, and let the person know that they're free to file another complaint. But rather than have all of these open complaints before us and spending a great deal of time trying to figure out how to handle them becomes a burden.
Not only does it become a burden, it becomes a real problem when sort of evidence and testimony and memories about the record of the complaint become stale. And this is, over a year and a half ago, or approximately a year and a half ago, that the events of this complaint. And this has already been continued once or more than once?
At least once.
Okay, I'm feeling like we should close this. We should that I'm inclined to make a motion to close this matter, and in doing so, provide very clear notice to the complainant that it is without prejudice to refiling this complaint if they see fit. That way, we are not, we are giving the complainant an opportunity to bring this before us again if they are inclined to pursue it further. But otherwise, this just sort of switches the default to closed for now. But I don't see it as very respectful to this body, frankly, to have us prepare as thoroughly as we do on these files and then not show, nor is it respectful to the respondent.
Or to the administrator.
Or to the administrator. So I will make the motion to close this matter without prejudice and with notice provided to the complainant that they are free to file the complaint again.
Yes, the motion shall be to table the matter, and the complainant will be informed of that matter and that she can refile the complaint at a future date at her convenience.
And I second the motion.
And we should take public comment on that.
Hello, Michael Petrellis again. I want to speak in favor of your moves. It's also very disrespectful to other complainants and the public who, especially as a complainant, I want my items heard too. I think that there's been a tremendous reduction in the amount of time it takes for complaints to be heard. And complainants have responsibilities to communicate with the administrator, phone, email, faxes, before the hearings are going to happen. And really glad that you're moving forward with taking complaints, getting them heard a lot sooner than it used to be years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none?
On that motion, Member Copra absent. Member Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes. Item number 5, file number 14117, complaint filed by Michael Petrellis against District Attorney George Gascon and the Office of the District Attorney for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.21, 67.25, and 67.27, California Government Code 6253 for failure to respond to immediate disclosure requests in a timely and or complete manner.
Jurisdiction.
We need to find jurisdiction, seeing no reason not to find jurisdiction, I would move to find jurisdiction in this matter.
Second.
Is there any public comment regarding jurisdiction? There is no comment regarding jurisdiction. The motion is passed without objection.
Okay, and let's proceed then with hearing from the complainant in this matter. Mr.
Can you
Phelps.
show my document
Yes, we can.
on the overhead? Oh.
I got it.
Okay, I'll get started. Excuse me. In early November, the Chronicle, Mateer Ross reported on a whistleblower, if you will, from the District Attorney's Office about this fundraiser held on November 13th. It was a fundraiser for George Gascon's reelection campaign. That's how I learned about this fundraiser. There was an invitation, a copy of the invitation was sent to the Chronicle and also to Matt Dorsey at the City Attorney's Office. And Matt Dorsey provided me with what you're seeing here on the overhead. So we know that this event was to raise funds for the DA's reelection, and it was hosted by ADAs. That stands for Assistant District Attorneys. And it looks like there's a good 9, maybe 10 ADAs who are hosting this event. I filed a public records request for any emails to or from the district attorney, anyone in his staff, about this fundraiser. They complied within the allotted time. They were supposed to, but they said that they had no public records. I don't believe this. I don't believe that you can have a good 10 or so ADAs putting their names on an invitation for a fundraiser for their boss. At this time, I took to Twitter and other social media to complain about this, and soon the district attorney, George Gascon, his Twitter account blocked me after he had favorited, whatever the right term is, a tweet of mine saying, "Oh, I've got to trust the district attorney." So here's why I'm before this committee. There's the matter of does the district attorney really have no public records related to this fundraiser? The second matter is a larger issue of expecting the public to trust the person you're requesting records from to tell you the truth. In other words, yes, I am skeptical that George Gascon has no records about this, but what am I supposed to do? Go down to 850 Bryant and look in his computer? I don't know. I feel that there needs to be discussion about an independent body, an independent someone to go to on these matters, because you're filing the request with this agency and this public official, and if he does have documents and they're released, it's going to look really embarrassing for him. So the easiest thing is to say, no, we have no public records, and the person making the request has to just accept it. It's really just unsettling to me to think that really all of these folks were involved in this fundraiser somehow, some way, and not a single email was sent. I don't believe it.
Okay, and are there any individuals present to provide testimony on behalf of the complainant? Seeing none, let's hear from the respondent.
Good evening, members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. There is a definition as to what a public record is. As Mr. Petrella said, he filed a public records request. A search was conducted, and the response actually is slightly different than what Mr. Petrella said. The response was that there were no non-privileged documents. But regardless, as far as public records goes, Mr. Petrellis is correct. And if there are any questions that I may answer, I'm more than happy to answer anything that you may have.
Okay, let's first, before we get to that, should we ask if there's anybody present to provide testimony on behalf of the respondent? Okay, then seeing nobody, then the matter is with us. I do have a few questions.
Sure.
Certainly, we could start with the flyer and the event itself. Were you personally involved with organizing the event?
My name is not on the flyer. As far as being personally active in some capacity, my name is not on the flyer.
Okay, actually, I can only see sort of some of the flyer. If you could move.
Sure.
Just to see, I can't see any of the names of the individuals on the flyer. Might help. Okay, so it does look like there are, 15 or so individuals who are listed on the flyer as hosts of this event. Were you privy to the to any discussion about how this was being organized, or when it was being organized, or by whom, or?
As far as the underlying fundraiser, do I know about it? Yes, I know about it. As far as how it was disseminated, as far as public records go, my understanding is that public records are public emails during public time. As far as if people, for example, disseminated something at 8 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, my purview as far as the public records go, my understanding of it is to adequately ascertain and find out whether or not emails were sent either on a public email or during public time, during work time. So as far as finding out whether or not there's public record for that, that is something that I put due diligence into to finding out, and there were no public records as it relates to that.
Okay, so a couple questions right there. First of all, what is your role at the DA's office?
So I'm an assistant district attorney. I'm also the director of communications.
Okay, and as the director of communications, or are you also the custodian of records at the district attorney's office?
Sure, I am.
Okay. Which means that you have custody over any public records that are disseminated from or received by the district attorney's office or within internally?
Through a cursory search or through a search, I would be able to access that, correct? As far as am I the IT director? Am I the person that's able to, with a click of a button, magically find out every single thing that has been sent back and forth? No, I'm not that technologically savvy. However, I am the custodian of record for this purpose.
So do you have access to the work emails of individuals who work at the district attorney's office?
I wouldn't necessarily, when you say access
Can you
to it,
personally search those email accounts?
I cannot personally search those email accounts.
Okay, but you can request that other individuals search those email
Correct.
accounts. Okay, so when you received this, okay, before I get into that, with respect to public time, what do you mean by that? Does that mean that if you send something on a public email address during not, the normal work hours, that's not public?
No, that's not
Okay.
what I meant by that. I just
Okay.
meant to say that there's a definition for what a public record is. I looked it up in the Sunshine. I looked it up in the Good Government Guide. I've understood it to mean what a public record is based on what the definition is, and I just wanted to kind of throw it out there that there can be. I understand what everyone's point is, Mr. Petrellis' point is, but there can be emails sent that would not be in my purview or my ability as a custodian of record to be able to get if an email was sent, let's say, at 12 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, if it was sent from a personal email address, for example.
Okay, so if an individual is conducting public business on a private email address after hours,
That is also a public record.
that is a public record.
Correct.
Okay.
That is not what I'm saying.
But you don't have access to that public record.
Well, what I can do is correct. I don't have access to that record. That's correct. A private email. But I can ask for that.
It's an interesting issue because increasingly we're seeing public business, or we're not seeing it rather, but the assumption is that increasingly public business is taking place on private email addresses, and they become sort of quasi-private, quasi-public email addresses, and it's sort of a really gray area that we have no real way of confirming information on. And you're kind of telling me the same, that that you can't really confirm whether emails relating to public business were sent on people's private email accounts.
Again, what I did is I did a search, the best due diligence I could within our office.
Okay.
And as far as I can tell, I did my due diligence. I tried my best. There was nothing that I can find as far as public records are concerned. The only thing I did find was an email that was, as you know, attorney-client privilege, and it was an email as it relates to the city attorney's office and our office.
Okay. If I could keep on going, unless you want to.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at the timeline here. So Mr. Petralis sent an email, an IDR, on November 25th, asking for any and all emails, which, according to you, you didn't yourself have direct access to, so you would have had to ask numerous individuals,
Correct.
Do you have anything?
Correct.
And right away, within 24 hours, as required by the IDR, or by the Sunshine Ordinance in response to an IDR, the response was asking for a 14-day extension.
Correct.
Because this was going to take a while.
That's correct.
And then on December 10th, Ms. Soto DeBerry sent an email to Mr. Petralis simply stating there were no non-privileged records responsive.
Correct.
Okay. Now, a problem there is that that's not good enough according to the Sunshine Ordinance. If you're going to not produce records, you have to specify the exact part of the ordinance that exempts whatever it is you're withholding. So that didn't happen on December 10th. It was after you heard that a complaint had been filed that there was another response saying, listing some of the code, California government code and so forth. So there was a problem immediately. Just saying we have nothing responsive is not sufficient according to the Sunshine Ordinance. And also, I guess, if I would have been Mr. Petralis, I would have been baffled by the reasons for withholding, that attorney work product and attorney-client communications. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a fundraiser, a party, and so it's not like you were working on a legal matter here. We're talking about a party. And so, okay, so as I understand how campaigns are supposed to work, so an elected official, you're not supposed to be coordinating campaign matters using public, or using your office, using public emails. It's not public business. It's political business. So this has to be done some other way. And that's one issue I'm wondering about here. Was there any campaign-related activities happening in the office? Even if it was after hours, it's still in the office. But what Mr. Petralis was really interested in was, was there any, somebody getting this might think, I've got to show up and I've got to contribute or I might lose my job. So that's what's really at issue here. But all this other stuff is important too. When you just cannot say, we don't have anything non-privileged records. So you have to cite chapter and verse. We can't give you these things because of this. We can't give you these other things. And so when you did, after their complaint was raised, it just kind of, the reasons given don't fit my understanding of what's going on here. We're talking about a fundraiser. We're not talking about a court case, a case that you're working on. So I'm just, is this all making sense? Are you following what I'm saying here?
I'm following. Just in response, it is in the capacity of the city attorney's office being our legal representative as the district attorney's office. It is in that capacity that I'm referring to as it relates to the email. So just for clarification purposes.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. It is in the capacity of the city attorney's office being our legal representative of the San Francisco District Attorney's Office that is being cited to. So, in other words, the city attorney's office is actually given the power to be the attorney of the district attorney's office.
Right.
They actually represent many agencies in the city, as you may know. And so it is in that capacity that email exchange was made, and that is why it is a privileged document. That is why it's an attorney-client privileged document and then that is why that exception, or that is why that attorney-client exception is applicable in that situation. So it is not in the context, the email itself is not in the context of anything other than that. It is in the context of that attorney-client communication.
Are you talking about the email that attached this flyer that was sent to Matt Dorsey?
No, I am referring to the email after conducting a search. There was an email that was attorney-client privileged that was an email sent from the city attorney's office to the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. And so I just wanted to clarify what that exception was all about, why that exception was used in that email.
Now, Mr. Petralis has also indicated that he was provided a document by Mr. Dorsey that had this flyer attached to it. Mm-hmm. Was that a separate email? And if so, why was that email not produced?
As far as that, I know the city attorney's office does their own investigation, so I'm not quite certain what you mean by how Mr. Dorsey, it wouldn't be best.
Well, it sounds to me like this would have been sent out to publicize the event, as well as perhaps, possibly, judging by what you're telling me now, for counsel from the city attorney's office as to whether this was, within bounds. And that would constitute attorney-client, communications. That I understand. Yep. But whether this was sent to members of the city attorney's office like Mr. Dorsey for reasons of, hey, come to the event. And let's be clear, I don't believe Mr. Dorsey is legal counsel.
So again, the city attorney's office is the agency that represents the district attorney's office. The whole purpose of the attorney-client privilege is to protect any and all conversations between an attorney and the client.
That constitute advice. I mean, there are limitations on that. Not my conversations over lunch with the client are not attorney-client privileged unless we're discussing the case.
I 100% agree. Correct. It is legal advice, and it is in that context and in that capacity that the email was sent. And so for that reason, we exercise the attorney-client privilege.
And it's your position that that's the only email that was returned as responsive to this request?
As far as the due diligence that I conducted, that was the only email that
Okay.
I was able to locate.
So let's talk a little bit about the search itself then, because what was your process? How did you go about responding to the request?
So I checked in with every person listed on that flyer.
Okay, and how did you check in? What did you ask them?
I asked them if they have any kind of information or if any emails were sent as it relates to the fundraiser.
Okay, and do you know that they conducted searches, or did you supervise their searches at all? Did you give them search strings to run in their emails?
I did, I guess I would say I supervised a fair number of them. Some of them I did in terms of, as you know, an assistant district attorney's job is very hectic sometimes. So sometimes people are coming and going. It's not that much time at a desk sometimes. Sometimes you have to go to court. So what I did
Which
was,
is why you requested the 14-day extension, I assume, so that you had
correct.
extra time to do so.
Correct, but even with that, it's not always as easy as you might think to be able to have the time allotted. So what we did was I basically asked every person to conduct a search. Some of them I was there for the search. In some situations, there was a lot of hustle and flow and a lot of hectic court cases on. So what I did was I asked them to conduct that search at a time where they are less stressed by their work or less busy with their work.
Okay, and did they all respond to you to say that they had no? How did they inform you that they had performed a search and that no records were returned?
I asked them to search. I asked them if they have anything, and if they had anything to let me know.
Okay, and how did they let you know?
First of all, if in some situations I was right there. In other situations, I essentially waited to hear back. In some situations, I just called them to see if there was anything that they would find.
Okay, did any of them reply to you by email that they had performed a search and no records were returned?
No, I did not send an email as it relates to that.
Okay. So, in my last question, I think, was with respect to the searches. Were they asked to perform searches of their private email addresses?
I asked them to search their email as it relates to work. As far as private email, I don't recall. I don't think I asked them to search their private email. No.
Okay. Do you know when this event was announced? Even?
I'm not certain. I don't have that information. I mean, I know when the event was, given that it's on the flyer. But as far as when it was quote unquote announced, I'm not sure about that.
So I'm struggling here because it seems almost impossible that there would be no email communications between any of these people related to this event. It just seems very unlikely. And the issue that the complainant has raised here is one that is very relevant to the work that we do, and it goes to the impossibility of verifying the truth of what we're hearing from you now. I'm not saying that you're a distrustful person, but my skepticism is flaring right now just because of the number of people on the flyer and the knowing very well what it takes to organize an event like this, sending emails to Ted's Sports Bar, getting, there's a lot of documented communications that occur in the process of organizing an event like this. Mm-hmm. And the only reasonable explanation that is coming to mind right now is that because they are not allowed to take part in these activities as part of their public duties, as part of their public work email, whatever, that this necessarily took place on private emails and was a separate activity from their public business. I don't know really, practically speaking, how separate it can be when it's being organized by ADAs who work for the person who is up for re-election. I mean, that's a really sketchy distinction between public and private duties.
I have a question about the flyer. So,
sure.
How is it disseminated?
The flyer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where did you send it? Did you have an electronic version that you sent around to people?
I didn't send the flyer to anybody.
No. Well, to the best of your knowledge, how did people hear about this?
My guess would be, I can't speak to everyone, but my guess would be that perhaps there were private emails that were distributed to people in private, one private email to another private email.
I have another question.
Sure.
So the response on December 10th,
Sure.
that the DAO did not have any non-privileged records responsive to his request, makes it sound like there were records responsive to the request, but they could not be disclosed.
Correct.
So when you asked all these folks to send you copies of emails responsive to this request, something must have turned up. Otherwise, you would have said there was nothing responsive to this request. But instead, you implied that there were, but you couldn't disclose them.
Correct, and it is in the capacity of the city attorney's office as our legal counsel of the district attorney's office that an email does arise, and that is exactly why I've received many public records requests from Mr. Petrellis, and Mr. Petrellis has received many responses. The response there is very different than the normal response. It makes it so that there is in fact something different there, and that is what the difference is. There is in fact an email which is privileged in nature. The attorney-client privilege does apply to it, and that is exactly why the response is as you indicated.
Would you be amenable to providing a privilege log to Mr. Petrellis of all documents that were not disclosed because they were covered by a privilege?
So I was here earlier when you had discussed that exact matter. As far as what would be the right course of action and what to do, I'm more than happy to do anything that the city attorney's office as our legal representative indicates we should do, and I'm more than amenable to do whatever is within the rubric and the framework of the law.
Okay. So it's my understanding, just to let you know, the city attorney will have its own position, but it may actually be consistent with my own,
Sure.
is that in certain circumstances, a privilege log is not privileged. In certain circumstances, it may be, depending on how much it bears upon litigation strategy or time expended, resources expended on certain tasks. Then it may be a little touchier and may more clearly fall under a privileged communication. But a privilege log itself, outside of those exceptions, a privilege log itself, the existence of a communication without any of the substantive content, is not ordinarily protected by the attorney-client privilege. So that's just so you know where I stand on that. Sure. And that's a document that might help Mr. Petrellis substantially in verifying the adequacy of the response to his request. I would absolutely encourage you to go to the city attorney and ask if that's in bounds, whether you can produce a privilege log solely related to documents that were turned up as a result of this search.
I certainly will do that this week.
Okay.
I'll make sure to go talk to them.
And again, I'm sort of left in an impossible position. I'm sorry, highly skeptical. But at face value, I think that we are left with what we have, and if it's okay with Member Washburn, I think we can hear just rebuttals from both parties Sure. at this point before we decide what to do with this.
Sure.
Your rebuttal, I believe, is first.
Okay. I have nothing additional submitted.
And complainant, you have 3 minutes, is it?
Yes.
3 minutes?
Thank you very much for really good questions and for reminding me that the response in December about non-privileged records, I remember bringing this to the attention of my boyfriend, who was a legal secretary and works downtown, and he was like very skeptical that there would be any privileged records related to a fundraiser in a sports bar. And, to keep up the energy of responding to these public officials when they, invoke an extension and then they come back and, a lot of the times the responses, they give you so much chapter and verse of the law and really don't give it to you in just plain English. You're like, oh, what am I going to do now? Keep going up against a multi-million-dollar agency and a very ambitious politician to try and get these records. And let's be honest here. If there were any emails that they turned over to me from any ADA or any secretary or anyone in that office, yes, I would be at the Ethics Commission to file a complaint because you can't do that. The office holders cannot have the staff putting in time on city time for their fundraising efforts. And I cannot believe that a dozen or so ADAs and everyone else in the office had no communication whatsoever, even in terms of, oh, I'll see you later on, or, hey, I'm running late because I got to sit in the judge's chambers. No communication whatsoever is really hard to believe. I think that where I want this complaint to go is to a larger discussion of how are we to verify when the individual you've requested the documents from is saying they don't have documents. You're asking an awful lot of the requester to put trust into these officials when if they do have something, it's going to be pretty embarrassing. That's my rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, we are in the process of developing, Mr. Young has taken the lead on this, recommendations to respondents about, okay, how did you search for the records? What have you done? I mean, there is going to be, am I correct, Mr. Young? There's going to be, really an outline of what to follow.
Yes, I believe that was at our last hearing, which I have listed 4 items for the respondent to address when they were responding to a complaint.
Right. So when a complaint is made, it has to. Then you will hear from the respondent what they did to. They will have to be very specific about what it is they did to try to obtain the records that were requested,
including search strings
terms
that were used.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I remember correctly, this is kind of under the same category of concerns that we wanted EOT to address with respect to Board of Supervisors, retention policies, and production of email records. Short of having an independent person go in and actually review every email, there are steps that we can take to increase some accountability in these requests and responses. And I think that that's one of them, requiring sort of an itemization of what steps were taken and what search strings were used and who searched the emails and what accounts were searched. Is there some type of information like that? And also, I think the privilege log provides some, verification that, records were found, as you would expect they would be. But those records we can't produce because they fall under, these privileges. And that's not going to satisfy somebody looking for the substance of those communications, but does provide some, verification that a search was performed and that records were produced, and et cetera, et cetera.
Point of clarification. Yes. That is not a flyer. That is an invitation. It was a paper invitation that is a photo of it. Okay, I just want to make that clear to everyone that this is not an email that was sent out. This is a photo of a paper invitation. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. With this matter, I'd like to move to find a violation of 6727 for failing to properly justify withholding records responsive to the complainant's request. And
if we could use this complaint as a vehicle to address the issue of whether privilege logs, whether the city attorney is obligated to do that, I think that falls under that same section.
Right, so I think that what we can recommend to the task force, so this is a motion to recommend to the task force that we find a violation of 67.27, and also a recommendation to consider to ask that a privilege log in this matter be produced. And then the task force could talk about that at our next meeting.
Right.
Or whenever this is on the agenda.
Yes. And what was that question again regarding are privilege logs exempt, or the question you wanted to ask?
Disclose.
Right. Can privilege logs themselves be disclosed, or are they exempt from attorney-client privileges and attorney work product privileges?
Thank you.
Okay. Was that a motion?
I believe
Okay,
that
I
the
second that motion then.
The motion is to find violation of section 67.27 for failure to justify the withholding of the record, and the committee will further recommend that the task force, I believe, open a hearing file to discuss the question of whether privilege logs are disclosable. I will get further detail and put it into the recommendation
Okay.
based on the audio recordings.
And I just want to be clear to the representative of the DA, too, that our default on this board is skepticism, especially when we're performing a fact-finding mission, and I did not mean to impugn your trustworthiness or the veracity of what you were telling me. It's the hat that you must wear when you're, delving into this sort of issue. And then I believe we need to take public comment on that motion.
Yes. Is there any public comment regarding this matter? There is no public comment. On that motion, Member Copra, absent. Member Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. This matter will be referred with recommendation to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force meeting, I believe, of March the 4th.
Thank you.
Copies of that recommendation will be provided to both parties prior to the meeting. Next on the agenda, item number 6, file number 14108, complaint filed by Sadie Kamen against the San Francisco Planning Department for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.15 and California Government Code Sections 54954.3 A through C for failure to provide adequate opportunity for public comment during Planning Commission hearings.
Okay, and first we have to find jurisdiction to hear this complaint. I note that planning does not contest jurisdiction. I don't see any reason not to find jurisdiction, so I will move to find jurisdiction here.
Second.
Is there any public comment regarding jurisdiction? There is none. The motion to find jurisdiction passes without objection.
Okay, and then the way we proceed is to hear from the complainant first. You have 5 minutes, is that right?
That is correct.
Correct, 5 minutes to hear from the complainant.
All right, hi. So thanks for your service and for allowing my complaint to be heard here today. So I'll be quoting from the arguments from the Planning Department's response and giving our responses to those. So providing accurate times would be impossible and could potentially cause significant delay of weekly proceedings and project authorization, and we understand the public's frustration with the extended wait times. However, the number of public commenters and length of commission deliberation on an item are impossible to predict. Providing accurate times is not impossible. I did a quick analysis of the 9 years' worth since 2006 of video hearings that the city provides on its website. This is the distribution of lengths of item times. We see that 95% of items take less than 2 hours and 12 minutes. So if you schedule 2 hours and 12 minutes for every item, 95% of the time you would not go over. Of course, scheduling this way would be foolish, like guessing the length of a car trip without knowing where you were going. As the commissioners and staff are all well aware, different types of items take different amounts of time. For instance, commission questions. In 9 years, this has never taken more than 35 minutes and typically takes around 20 minutes. Another example is informational presentations. These don't have public comment, so their exact length can be negotiated with the presenter ahead of time. Discretionary review. 3/4 of the time, they take less than an hour. However, the commission, the parties, and they all have a great deal of contact with one another before the date of the hearing. The commission has access to information that the general public does not have regarding how controversial these items are and therefore how long they may take. The sides can submit estimates of how many people they anticipate testifying, further improving staff's ability to correctly estimate the expected time length. The commissioners and staff have more information than the general public does about all of the items. There are some controversial items that you know will take a long time. For example, items with the words Park Merced take 3 times as long as other large project authorizations. Park Merced was a huge, complicated, and controversial project. Informally, you schedule time for it, and so we're asking you to share that knowledge with the public. The next comment was that if items took less than their allotted time, recesses throughout the meeting would cause unnecessary delay. This is exactly the opposite of what is true. Let's first look at the word delay used here. So a delay is a period of time by which something is late or postponed. What is late? Doing something or taking place after the expected time. If all of the items took less than their allotted times, there would be 0 delays. The whole point of this proposed arrangement is to prevent all delays permanently. Nothing needs to be heard late. Everything can be scheduled for a specific time and then heard at that time, not a later time. Let's look at an example of what happens if every item takes less than its allotted time. So if item 13 is scheduled to start at 1 and starts at 1 and is finished after 45 minutes, item 14 is scheduled to start at 2, starts at 2 and is finished after an hour, item 15 is scheduled to start at 3, starts at 3:30 and starts at 3:30 and finishes after 25 minutes, and item 16 is scheduled to start at 4 and starts at 4 and takes an hour and 15 minutes, and then the meeting is adjourned. In this scenario where items take less than their allotted time, there are 0 delays. No items start late, and every item is heard at its expected time. It's clear that delay cannot be the word that the commission meant to use. The commission means to highlight the periodic gaps that appear under a scenario like this: 15 for the first item, 30 for the second, 5 for the third, and none for the last because it is the last item. A total of 50 minutes in this example. The commissioners and staff might feel that without each item being scheduled, in this example, they could have left work almost an hour early. Here, it's appropriate to consider the claim that the use of commissioner time and staff time is unnecessary. This is insulting to the members of the public that spend their afternoons at the Planning Commission and the members of the public who are excluded from public participation because of the uncertainty and time it takes to testify. Will the remedy proposed here cause the commissioners and staff to spend more times at hearings? Yes, it will, absolutely. But is this unnecessary? If it allows members of the public to give input they would not otherwise be able to give, and we argue that it does, it is certainly necessary. We argue that, like time for public comment itself, the law requires that commissioners and staff spend the time it would take to make the commission meetings reliably accessible to the affected public. However, we always remind members that the items called out of order and can be continued at the last minute, which is why it is impossible to predict when an item is called during the meeting. As mentioned before, the remedy we are requesting is don't call things out of order. And if an item is continued at the last minute, don't let that affect the other items.
Thank you. And is there anybody present to provide testimony on behalf of the complainant in this matter? And I want to be clear that this is not public comment right now.
No, can I give you these? Do you want these? I should have sent them in earlier.
I do want them. I do wish you had sent them in earlier, if only because that way they would have been distributed to the public present. And they look fascinating on, a half seconds view, and would certainly inform at least the questions that we ask this evening. Is there an extra copy of this? If not, I can provide, or I can use, we can probably look at the same copy and have another copy available to members of the public who want to take a look at it. And if there's nobody here to provide additional testimony on behalf of the complainant at this time, we can hear from the respondent's representative. Is there a member of the Planning Commission present?
Good evening, committee members. My name is Jonas Ione, and I'm the Director of Commission Affairs for the Planning Department, which makes me the commission secretary as well as the custodian of records. So I've got a lot of comments. First, I'd like to start off by saying I sympathize with the complainant and the members of the public who do have to wait sometimes many hours before their item is reached in the meeting. However, I want to get it out of the way. The complainant has not submitted anything in my mind that demonstrates the Planning Commission and or the Planning Department has violated any section of the Sunshine Ordinance or the Brown Act. And that's really what's before you. I will also say that I've spoken to a party of the complainant at this hearing as we were waiting for our item to be called. And I think they have some fantastic ideas. I appreciate the data mining that they've done that was conducted by the complainant. I think it'd be interesting to review, and I'd be happy to sit down with them to determine whether or not we are maybe more able to provide some better direction as to when certain items may be called. But I would like to draw to your attention how difficult that is. This is your agenda for today for the, the special, or this was the regular meeting, that started at 4 p.m. Okay? This hearing was scheduled to start at 4:30 p.m. It didn't start till closer to 5, if not after 5. I'm challenged every week because applicants, opponents to projects call me to find out what time their item is going to be called. It is impossible for me to do so. We don't know how many public speakers are wishing to comment on a matter, and it would be, I think, an injustice to tell someone that the next item needs to be called, and so therefore we need to continue this matter to another week, sometimes a month later, and these are people who've waited a year or several months, sometimes several years, to get before the Planning Commission to say you're going to have to come back in order to submit your public comment and for the Planning Commission to deliberate and then issue a determination on whatever entitlement is before them. Like I said, I think some of their ideas might be interesting. I just find them logistically difficult to implement for the reason that I've described in my brief. With that, I respectfully request that you find that the Planning Commission and the Department are not in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance and or the Brown Act.
Thank you. And I want to just upfront thank both parties for submitting very thorough documentation. Makes it easier for us to consider the merits of the complaint. And is there anybody here to provide comment on behalf of the respondent? Seeing none, the matter is with the task force. It's an interesting issue.
Absolutely.
It's really fascinating and very relevant, given that what we do here is try to increase public participation and public access to government institutions and commissions. I mean, that's squarely under our purview, that mission statement. That said, I don't know that we are necessarily the body that can do much more than find a violation of what's already existing law, existing ordinance. We're certainly not the body that can change legislation. That said, we have recommended that it be done so. And in fact, one of the items on our compliance and amendments calendar earlier, if you were here for it, was to expand the calendaring requirements under the Sunshine Ordinance to include all elected officials, including members of the Board of Supervisors. We cannot proactively change that ourselves. We can proactively submit sort of recommendations for how the Sunshine Ordinance should be interpreted, and you know. So I'm just trying to be upfront about the extent of our jurisdiction and to really give you the relief that you are seeking, whether it's merited or not. So that's sort of my preliminary thought on it. I have a lot of additional thoughts, but does Member Washburn?
Yes, I have to say that this is a fascinating item, and it's precisely the kind of item that we need to hear, and that this is an opportunity to think about a problem that plagues this building, including our own body here. And I'm very impressed with the work that you did. I'm a college professor. I teach research methods, and this is wonderful. So great job. And your graphics are very clear. The data are compelling, and I think informative, and could help us think about how to structure public meetings in a way that will serve most people. And I know that your sample size was really small for when you interviewed people to see, did you leave because you just weren't going to be able to stay around to offer public comment? And you found that, it was, I don't know, around 15, 17% of people just gave up and left. And I know this happens all the time here. And we're working with the Budget and Finance Committee of the Board of Supervisors, trying to figure out a way for public comment to happen for the budget hearings, because it's a nightmare with lines going, all around the corridors. So, I don't know that I don't necessarily see a violation here, but what I do see is a project for the task force to work, to think about. And I hear the planning. We all know what you're talking about. We all do, whether we sit on this side or that side. And when I chair the regular task force meeting, and I'm always looking at the clock and realizing we're falling farther and farther behind, and people are leaving, and we're staying here till 11, 12 o'clock at night, and nobody's being served well. So, and Mr. Ionin he showed us how we were behind tonight. We got off late, and have been falling. So there's some. I think this is something that the task force could take on, and that's what I would like to see. I would like to see, you have provided data, you've got some ideas. The Planning Commission recognizes that you've got some good ideas. We recognize that. This might be a project for EOT, or maybe our body, the Compliance and Amendments. So we could, if not amend the ordinance, which is certainly a possibility regarding public testimony and agendas for meetings, but short of that, we could certainly come up with some best practices, perhaps. I think that's needed. Boy, I'd like to crack this nut. It's a hard one. And I really am deeply appreciative of this item. I was reading it going, wow, this is good stuff here. So, and I appreciate the Planning Commission, realizing there's a problem, and and as is the Board of Supervisors in the budget hearings. We need to be able to come here and be heard and move along agendas and have a life too. So, many thanks.
I have a few follow-up questions, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because after all, it's why you're here, right? So whoever wants to answer questions, if they could step up to the microphone from the complainant. So
Shut this down, huh? Oh, I'm Sonia. This is we worked on this together, but
Okay.
Shade really put it in.
Would you mind if I have your last name for the record?
Oh, sorry, Trauss, Trauss, Sonja is my first name.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. And I'm looking at I'm trying to understand the graphs here that have been submitted. I'm just looking at one here containing the word, quote, mission. Now, the minutes, is that corresponding to the entire meeting or to each agenda item?
That's any agenda item, whose title, the name of the agenda item contained the word mission.
And that was targeting sort of like the mission district at the planning commission, right?
Yeah.
Those tend to run longer?
That one isn't as good as like Park Merced because, anything on Mission Street, which could be downtown or Soma or anything, but it was just another filter. This is sort of this is just like our amateur analysis. Like somebody who's really good at this would do a better job.
The reason, the reason I ask is because, I don't know about the sample size or the methods involved, but 143 minutes per agenda item is long, and we have agendas that have 15 items on them at times, and that would be a serious wrench in our process. So how predictable can it really be, though? And I think that's kind of where the conversation is going to go, because this is a great starting point, I think, for the research, but I think more needs to be done. And let me ask you a question. What happens if an agenda item runs over its allotted time?
So as sort of mentioned by both of us, well, okay, first of all, so that's why I have these distributions, because you can see that most things, like for instance, the mission is, the biggest category is 0 to 20 minutes, and they all have these long tails. And our guess is that these long tails are, outliers. And so there should be some clue leading up to them, like heavy, like a lot of, correspondence beforehand. So wait, you had another question though, sorry.
Oh yeah, so if an agenda item that is expected to take 15 minutes, and assuming that this may also be a very outlier incident, where, we thought this was going to be 15 minutes. It doesn't have anything to do with Park Merced, doesn't have anything to do with the mission. Right. Why is this 15-minute item lasting 50 minutes or, 30 minutes? And then what happens to the next agenda item?
So the idea, the Planning Commission already, I've seen it happen, if they are on their last item and they see it's 4:55 and they see that they think it's going to take another couple hours, I've seen them continue it. So they already can stop things and continue them, and that would be the idea. There's no reason why they would have, if we're making a new system, there's no reason you have to wait another month. You can continue it to the next day.
Well, okay, and that would involve an overhaul of the scheduling of meetings as well then. And because on the other hand, if you are to cut a meeting short and continue it, that poses another hurdle to commenters who have arrived to provide comment on this date.
For that one.
And now are being told, we have to show up next week. Right?
Yeah,
so there's there are ways to push back a little bit. And now, and another thing that I'm thinking is if we're following this logically to how it's going to evolve, and I think that this is a really great starting point for evolving this system into something that's a little bit more, correlated with the data that you've, on a brief search have given to us. Where this is going, though, so if you have these things segmented out, it becomes a lot easier for people to organize around them, which is the whole idea. Yeah. I totally get that. That's like the essence of the democratic process right there, is to allow people to organize around these particular agenda items effectively. But then you kind of... You run the risk of getting to a point where, don't you want to require people to sign up in advance for public comment so that it can be as predictable as possible?
It would be nice. I think that you could probably get a lot of people to do it voluntarily without requiring it. Especially because if the Planning Commission's like, dear respondents, you have been scheduled 2.5 hours. Write back if you think that that's the wrong amount of time. Parties kind of know who they're organizing and how many people and this type of thing. And nobody wants to go to the next day. Everybody's going to be motivated to figure out what the right amount of time is. And so if there is a back and forth, like we're scheduling for this amount of time, does that sound like the right amount of time to you? How many people do you expect to show up? I think that you can get people to give reasonable and usually accurate responses. Like it is true that it won't always be right, but the idea is if it's right 80% of the time, that's a huge improvement in everybody's life. Because right now, when people guess, they guess right, 2% of the time. Like almost no one guesses right. Except that the instances where the hearings did run really long, you've provided information that those are in fact the outlier circumstances.
Yeah.
So
Right.
in fact, they are, guessing somehow, but they're guessing wrong in these outlier circumstances, no? Doesn't the argument work the other way just as well? I don't understand. Well, these are, you've shown instances like where agenda items contain the mission. You've shown instances where they reliably go way longer. But what percentage of total hearings is that? Is that not a fairly small? Oh, right. Yeah, so that's where you would, let's look at. So how often do they get it right is what I'm wondering. Oh, I mean, since nobody is making guesses right now, like the Planning Commission doesn't make a guess, so they can't be right or wrong. Right. When I meant getting it right, I meant for individuals. Because basically no matter what, someone has to guess. Right? Either estimated times are provided and the Planning Commission guesses, or we continue with the current situation, which is every single member of the public makes a guess. Right. And so guesses are happening anyway, but right now the people that are forced to guess and then forced to suffer the downsides of their wrong guesses are the people with the least information. Right. And even if the Planning Commission feels like they don't have enough information to be right a lot of the time, they definitely have more information than any given member of the public. Like a lot of the public doesn't even know that there are 4 floors on City Hall. This is their first time coming. They know nothing about these hearings. Yeah. I think it's compelling. I'm wary of a system whereby it's required that you sign up in advance for public comment. And I know that's not what you're proposing,
No,
but
not
it
at
seems to me to be, sort of making requirements for public comment a bit more rigid at its worst manifestation. I know that's not what you're proposing, but I could see it developing that direction. I think that it's a really, 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 really valuable thought to try and make it easier for the public to organize around agenda items. I mean, it's great. And at its best, providing reliable times will encourage more people to show up. A lot of, you have even statistics about people who left because it took too long. Well, the statistics regarding people who could never show up, who never showed up because, they had no idea how long it was going to take, well, that's, a really significant factor as well. I'm trying to think about what to do with this. We do need to hear from the public, right? Correct?
We need to hear rebuttals, and then we'll take public comment.
Right, okay. Okay. So then this is the point. I got a little distracted, but this is the point then where you have 3 minutes to provide a rebuttal or to provide your final statement, and then the respondent goes first. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, gosh, excuse me. So if the respondent has 3 minutes then.
Thank you, committee members. Jonas Ionin with the Planning Department again. I hear what you're saying. So this is quite an interesting topic because we at the Planning Department and the Planning Commission have strived to make the public process better. We've strived to make huge improvements. Years ago, we've committed to pay SF.gov TV to record our hearings. They're broadcast live and they're streamed live. So when people ask me, when will my item come up, I always suggest to follow the hearing on their computer if they're available or on their television so that they can get a gauge of how the hearing is moving and, if they can get down here a couple items before. The struggle is always with items that are proposed for continuance that are actually under the regular calendar. They get called out. It happens actually quite frequently at the behest of the Board of Supervisors, the Mayor's office, for an item to be continued that's on the regular calendar. And so to fill that hole would be extremely difficult and I think frustrating to members of the public as well. As far as public comment, though, I guess I struggle with the fact that people aren't provided the opportunity to submit their public comment. They're able to submit their public comment verbally at the hearing, and again, timing is difficult. But I think the most efficient way and effective way to submit your public comment are the way I think both of you appreciate receiving it is in the written briefs in advance of the hearing. So you actually have the time and leisure to review and digest the information that is being submitted to you. Public commenters get 3 minutes here. There's no limit on the number of pages they can submit to make their argument valid to you. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't submit that packet of information that Sonia allowed me to review prior to the hearing and forwarded and submitted to you today. I know my commissioners really, really prefer that method of public comment, and on top of it, it gets put into the public record, not just through the audio or through minutes stating who spoke and when. I like the idea of submitting a request to speak ahead of time. We would love that. I'd love to be able to gauge what time I'm going to be able to get out of a hearing. For my own personal reasons, right? But as you know, people aren't permitted, they're not required to submit their name or to request to speak ahead of time. We simply can't do that. Okay. So as much as I appreciate all of the suggestions that have been made, and I will again say that I'm willing to sit down with them and look at their information and suggestions and take them to the officers of the Planning Commission and see what they say. Again, there's been no violation of the Sunshine Ordinance or the Brown Act.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I understand that it would be very convenient if everybody signed up in advance to provide public comment, but I actually think that would provide a great disservice to the public and would potentially have consequences that would be very dangerous. So I sympathize with the fact that would be great, but I want to make sure that it's not my position that is a good idea.
I also wanted to say that having members of the public prepare written statements ahead of time is useful for commissioners, but I think for a lot of hearings like ours, for example, people are responding in the moment to what's being said at the meeting, and so there's no way of knowing ahead of time, what's going to transpire. Maybe for the Planning Commission, many of your agenda items, it's a little bit different, but that's also can be burdensome for some people too, but should always be encouraged. Absolutely.
But I'm sorry. It's just their turn, actually. Okay. All right. And let's proceed then with the complainant's rebuttal.
So live streaming is essentially useless for any job where you're not in front of a computer. So the entire food service industry, painters, carpenters, plumbers, social workers, so teachers, any job where you have clients. So any job where you have clients or work by appointment, you don't know what your day looks like ahead of time. You can spare 45 minutes a day perhaps, but if you don't know what 45 minutes it is, you can't do that. And also watching the live streaming is pretty useless or hard if you try to take BART or live or work more than 15 minutes away from City Hall. The kinds of jobs that the Commission is envisioning, self-directed, unsupervised work, where your client or supervisor trusts you to manage your own time, are very rare, and that's another form of preventing public comment for a certain type of people. The majority of workers are heavily scheduled and supervised at work, and it's hard enough to ask for time off and impossible if you don't know how long exactly. We also believe that written comments don't have the same effect in person, and if they did, then an in-person public comment period probably wouldn't be mandated in the first place.
Thank you. And I would like to hear public comment on this, obviously.
Right.
Is this the right time to do so? Or can we have a little bit more discussion on the matter?
Yeah, I think it would, I want to hear everybody. But I also want to say that I'm thinking ahead to what we do with this matter. And I think I mentioned earlier, I'm having a hard time finding a specific violation of the ordinance. But what I do see, I think what I'd like to see is have this matter go before the full task force. And I'd like to hear testimony again. I'd like for them to hear your presentation again. I'd like to put the task force to hear the Planning Commission, and I would hope that the members would want to take this on as a project so we can help figure out how to make it possible for more members of the public to participate in the hearings and make it possible for commissioners and staff to have a bit more predictability and a bit more time too. We can do better than this. So,
may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
From my understanding from the testimony I'm hearing, you do not believe that there is a violation. May I suggest that we find that there's no violation and open a separate hearing file regarding this matter, just so that there can be a conclusion on the complaint, and we can still continue to hear it as a discussion matter before the task force.
Appreciate that. There's absolutely no violation.
Well, I think that I want to see this happen soon. There's some energy here. So I'd like to, have this on the regular task force agenda.
I can open a hearing file at any time.
Okay, yeah. So that's what as chair of the task force, that's what I would like to see. So, I'm not making a motion for a violation. I am recommending that we find no violation, but that we
Open a hearing.
Open a hearing.
And we can set a date at this time if you would like. The March meeting probably is not a good time, but we could probably set it for the April meeting.
The April meeting,
The first Monday in April.
Okay, that sounds good to me. So in April. And I would like, this is originating with the Planning Commission, but it's a larger problem. But I think we need this test case because we have the data, and we have the Planning Commission that's given this some thought. So, so this won't be a matter of discussing a violation. We're working on a problem. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I believe that would be the proposed recommendation of this committee, to find no violation and open a hearing file to discuss this matter further in the April meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I would like to move for that to occur exactly as you've indicated.
Okay. Public comment on that motion.
Hello, Michael Petrellis again. First of all, I think this is a very creative complaint. I'm very glad that it's come forward. As someone who has spent much time at many commissions, I think such a complaint should have been lodged sooner. I'm requesting that you vote in favor to send this matter to the full task force in the next month or so. And I think that the way the complaint is phrased, the importance that you all are understanding is reminding me of why the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force is so important to opening up city government. In terms of some practical matters, Berkeley's City Council, they take 15 minutes of public comment at the beginning of their meetings. You have to get there, put your name on a slip, they poll, they have a lottery, you get 2 minutes. If you're not one of the lucky people who gets 2 minutes, you go at the very end of the meeting when they have public comment, as long as it'll go. In other words, we can look across the bay to some solutions about when public comment is heard. At the full task force here, you all take public comment at 5 o'clock. That's another creative way of giving the public the methods to know when to show up, when they can be heard within reason. In terms of helping the meetings to move faster, after spending the past 4 or so months attending the Fire Commission meetings, the most recent meeting, this is after the Mission Fire at 22nd and Mission Street, we had a good 15 to 20 minutes of each commissioner lauding the very brave firefighters. No one doubts that the firefighters are brave, okay, but it took up like 20 minutes for each commissioner to say how terrific these firefighters were. What I'm saying is time limits for people on the panels. This clock is ticking for me right now. It should be. At the same time, I think commissioners can be way verbose, go on too long. Time limits for the commissioners need to be established. In terms of the Board of Supervisors, I have put this matter before them, as have other members of the Sunshine Posse, for at least 3 years. And it is really painful as a progressive to see that the progressive supervisors have done nothing about this to make sure in their own chambers every Tuesday at 2 o'clock they somehow are taking public comment at a regular time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Armand Damaluski. I teach public speaking and debate. And because I was told to come to this meeting at 5:30 and it's now 7:30, there are 3 students who did not get their lessons tonight because of the problem we have. The one thing I want to emphasize here is that we've talked a lot about the difficulty of doing this. We've talked a lot about how it can inconvenience people on the commission. It can inconvenience hypothetical people who might not be able to speak. But I also want to talk about the cost of the status quo. Right? We have major costs of people who can't attend these things because they have kids to feed or they have jobs to attend to. They don't have the types of jobs that they can afford to do this. And it's not just a cost to the individuals who want to speak, it's a cost that distorts public policy. A friend of mine works on a planning commission in another city that I won't name, and she tells me that public comment often results that city policy is made on an average of public comment. If there are 5 people arguing for and 2 people arguing against, they merge those comments, and basically that's the direction of policy. And because that happens, the types of people who don't work, or types of people who have lots of leisure time, who tend to be wealthier, tend to be people who have ability to sort of take off time from work, who have jobs such as those, have the ability to influence public policy more than other types of people. I'm not saying their voices don't matter, but the way we set public policy and allow commentary affects the types of public policy we make. And I think it's a little frustrating that all we talk about are the costs of convenience, but we also don't talk about the costs of the direction of public policy. I totally agree. People can listen to or read the comments that are submitted beforehand, but those are not the voices that commissioners hear. Those are not the voices that supervisors hear, and those voices are really important. In terms of the ability to schedule things, I totally understand that it's very frustrating that some people may show up to meetings and it turns out that we poorly predicted if they can or cannot speak. But I believe that the amount of people who would miss out on those, if you make for a generous margin of time, is much smaller than the thousands of people who will never show up to these things. I asked so many of my friends to come here and told them, no, don't worry, it's not going to be a big deal. I was wrong. They were right. It's going to be very difficult for people to show up to committee meetings, to show up to hearings, and think about the tens of thousands of people in this city who will never have a voice in city government outside of the ballot box because they can't take time off of work, they can't take time away from their kids to spend half a day at City Hall on unpredictable scheduling. And all we're concerned about is theoretically we might have a really big hearing and unpredictably 2 people might have to come back next week. There are costs and trade-offs no matter what we do, but it's important that we weigh the costs and trade-offs of the status quo against the costs and trade-offs of a potential change, and not just think about the costs of the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Luis Mejias. I'm a resident of San Francisco. I have a degree in planning from UC Berkeley. and I've worked at federal service for 6 years, so I appreciate all the work that the planning department does and all the public servants. I appreciate that. Right now, I'm unemployed, so you're all are lucky I'm able to be here. If I was working, though, I would still like the opportunity to participate in these types of meetings and have a voice. We really do need to provide an opportunity for all to participate. If planning is uncomfortable making a permanent change, there is always, I've done research before, you can always run a pilot test for a year, do a timed agenda, and compare the before and after participation rates. It's very easy to go back to something you have done, and it does not make any sense to not try something because, like I said, you can always go back. I would also like to say, just to respond to a couple of things that have been said here. If comments go over the allotted time, that's fine. Just tonight, if I knew that I could have been here at 6:30, I would much rather arrive at 6:30 than 4:30. That's 2 hours that I wasted. If we're talking about delay, that's 2 hours out of my life that I took because I wanted to make sure that I was here. I'd much rather wait, and if the previous agenda items had gone over past 6:30 to say 7 or 7:15, that's 45 minutes instead of 2 hours and 45 minutes. And finally, in-person comments are much more powerful than written-in comments. I know my mother would much more appreciate me saying I love you in person rather than in an email. So I think that the offer to send in written comments is appreciated, but that should be a last resort, not a first resort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sam Hauser. I am a San Francisco resident, and I'm in the construction and architecture industry. So as such, I've been to a lot of my share of different types of hearings, not just here, but in a lot of Bay Area municipalities. I can say that I really appreciate the problem. It's not just a problem that we have here. It's a problem we have throughout California. And I understand that it's a very complex thing to solve. And as such, I would just like to give an example of a meeting that I've gone to that was very, very successful, and it happens to be in an adjacent municipality at a design review board hearing. What they do in that municipality is they have a time projected for each agenda item, and they try to stick to it. If they run over, they run over. They tell each applicant to come 30 minutes before their scheduled time. If they're early, if they end at 6:20 and you're scheduled for 7, you don't arrive until 6:30. They wait for you those 10 minutes. But it really affords an opportunity for people to spend their time wisely and do what all of these people have been commenting on. The other thing that I've noticed in my share of public hearings is that you get a lot of squeaky wheels who will stay the end of the night, and they usually have very extreme views one way or the other. And all of the people who are more tempered and have maybe a better, not a better, but a more complex look at the issues and maybe can see both sides of it are the ones that usually end up leaving. And so I think that having a system that would accomplish what the complainant is talking about, I think it would really help a collaborative process with all sorts of different public members. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Egge. I've lived in San Francisco for about 20 years. I've been involved peripherally with the public policy community for around that same amount of time. And the first thing that I want to say is I'm really gratified to hear your response to this issue and this complaint. And I really implore you to use this as a vehicle to explore and fix this problem. When I first heard about this complaint, the first thing that came to my mind was my experience last year serving on the civil grand jury and the issues that we had to deal with around ensuring that city departments were effective through their legitimacy. And a big part of legitimacy is transparency, and a big part of transparency is accessibility. And this issue is ground zero for accessibility to government. I also want to tread on some issues that I will take complete response for, which is the perception of public comment among many in the public policy community and in the public at large, and certainly in the press, that public comment at many of our boards and commissions are often seen as kind of a sideshow that's overly dominated by the astroturfed and the eccentric. And certainly those people have the right to say whatever they want, but when public comment is scheduled according to the schedule of City Hall and the people whose schedules are compliant to City Hall's wholly, all you're going to get are what we've seen in, what the previous testifiers have talked about, which is people who are very passionate about one issue, the astroturfed people, the other people who have politely, time on their hands, etc. When what we really need to hear from, or who we really need to hear from, are the people whose lives are not necessarily slave to City Hall's clock. The biggest impact that city government has is on people who often do not follow city government, who suddenly see a change in their community that hits them in the face and they don't know where it came from. And that's who we have to respond to. So again, I implore you, use this complaint as a vehicle to fix this issue. And thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Yaskin. I live in San Francisco. Let's see, the ordinance that you're upholding says that the boards have to provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address them. Clearly, that doesn't mean provide the opportunity for 3 members. It also doesn't mean provide an opportunity for absolutely everyone, because that would be too expensive, to drive everyone here or pay them for their time off. But right now, they're failing to even get a statistically representative sample. They're, as several other people have said, getting primarily unemployed, retired, people who are doing this professionally, either as activists or developers, and occasional wealthy people who can afford to take several hours off in the middle of the day. There needs to be some way to get a sample of the people who are affected. And the Planning Commission replied to the complaint saying that written comments count. In my experience watching some of these meetings, it really doesn't seem that way. The oral comments are the only ones that anyone hears. If the commission goes against the weight of the oral comments, nobody says, oh, what if there were written comments that weighed the other way? And I think one way to make it easier to get a good sample of the public would be to really emphasize the written comments that you got. And clearly, I'm talking about you. It's clearly larger than just the Planning Commission. This is every commission in San Francisco, probably elsewhere, but we're here. If the boards would describe the written comments that they got and take as long as is proportional to the number of written comments, I think that would help possibly reduce the pressure for everyone to make an oral comment. I think it might actually be reasonable to require only written comments, but I do see your arguments that isn't a good idea for other reasons. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hello, Member David.
Hello. So just for the record, I am a member of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, but tonight I'm here speaking as an individual, and I'm actually representing the San Francisco Parent Political Action Committee, an organization that I co-founded that part of our mission statement is to make government in San Francisco more accessible to parents and families. And so I want to speak to, I want to stay away from Brown Act and Sunshine related issues and really talk about the value of predictable public comment and enforce and reinforce that I personally and our organization personally believes the more that we can make public comment predictable, time predictable, the more diversity of opinions we'll be able to get at public comment. Certainly as a parent, well, my son just walked in from the youth commission, but often it's very difficult to take 4 hours out of your day as a parent and be like, well, the kids can fend for themselves for 4 hours. We have responsibilities, and so I kind of want to echo, I think, what a lot of the other people have said already. That I think that the more predictable we can make public comment from a time point of view, the more diversity of opinion we'll be able to get by having people who just are busy being able to show up to City Hall and participate. So, thanks for thinking about this.
Thank you.
Wow.
Is there any additional public comment? That completes public comment.
Great.
A lot to think about.
Yeah, and I want to thank the complainants and the planning department again for coming out this evening, particularly the complainants for raising such a fascinating issue. It is this type of thing that gets us excited because it's not the rote violations or not that those aren't fascinating very often, but this is sort of an opportunity for us to stretch and do what we tried to get on this body to do. We're volunteers as well, first and foremost, and we're putting our time and effort into increasing transparency and access to city government. And this is a really, really, really valuable opportunity for us to follow this path and see where it takes us. I know personally what I'll probably do when I go home this evening is start searching for case studies and what various other municipalities are doing here in order to arrive at some sort of best practices, best policies for public comment, and see how much of that is worth codifying and distributing to various departments for their consideration, at least, if not to compel them to to do this. But I really thank you. It's been really, really pleasant, and I'm sure that when you're before the full task force, you'll find just as many interested ears among the full. There's usually 11 of us up here, so
including one of our speakers tonight, the dad.
David.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming. And I don't think we're going to find a motion of a violation. And I appreciate the respondent providing us with the relevant aspects of law so that we can, make sure that we're not making a mistake there. And I do look forward to seeing you guys before the full task force on this issue.
The motion is to find that no violation has occurred and refer that recommendation to the full task force for review. In addition to that, a hearing file shall be open to consider this matter further in terms of public comment.
Wonderful.
Right.
On that motion, Member Copra absent. Member Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Chair Hefner.
Aye.
Hefner, aye. The motion passes. Next on the agenda is item number 7, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda.
Michael Petrellis again. I want to thank you all for doing this incredible volunteer work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
You do your part as well.
You do too.
Good night.
Good night. Okay.
There is no further public comment. Item number 8, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items.
Well, this is the complaints committee agenda. I don't have any future items for this.
We'll just wait to see what comes down the pipe.
Just so one comment I wanted to provide that the last complaints committee had, the minutes for this committee, I have decided to place them before the full Sunshine Ordinance Task Force for review and approval. Since the membership of this committee is ever changing, I thought it would be better to have the full task force approve the minutes of this particular committee.
Oh, right.
Well,
that's true, because the committee changes membership.
That's true. But isn't that kind of requesting people who are not here to approve the minutes of what occurred while it was here? I mean, that raises that issue again.
Yes, it's at least they will be present at the Sunshine meeting. Otherwise, we'll be asking one committee to approve the minutes of the previous.
That's fine. I would possibly just ask that for the members who are not present, that they be asked to approve as to form, not accuracy, because that's sort of an impossible
Right.
an impossible task. It's a bit principled. Acknowledge, we're not, pulling any sleight of hand
Hopefully, when
here,
we
but
pass the bylaw amendments, the method for approving minutes will be changing,
Okay.
where they will have to offer corrections to the minutes. They will not be able to object out of hand. They would need to offer amendments in order.
which would involve going back and listening to the committee,
Yes.
which is, okay, that's fair.
Yes. Hopefully that will go through. That is pursuant to the Robert's Rules of Order, that methodology.
Sensibly work, in my opinion.
Yes.
And can we put time estimates on our next full task force? Just for grins to see how it goes?
To advise, we used to do that, but it never worked. We used to say estimated 40 minutes for this hearing.
Yeah, I was around.
We've decided to take it off because we are never on time.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting precedent for the conversation that we just had.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we don't have to do that. But I that was fascinating. Anyway, we should adjourn.
Yes, item number 9, adjournment. The time is 7:41. The meeting is adjourned.